Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar today, IT Service Management Nirvana. A few quick notes before we start. This event is being recorded today, so you will receive an email with a link to this recording as well as to a download of the slides. Your phone lines are muted today, so if you have any questions, please use the chat panel located at the bottom left of your screen. Please address your questions to all participants or all presenters. That will make it a bit easier for me to field those questions. And lastly, when we get to the point where Jeff is doing this demo, you will find it helpful if you are in full screen mode. So you may want to go ahead and move to full screen mode at this point to make viewing the demo easier. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen. Don?
Thank you, Stephanie. Hello, all, and thanks for joining us. I'm Don Casson, the CEO of Evergreen, and with me today is Jeff Benedict, who heads up our ITSM practice as well as leading our innovation efforts. We're already one slide ahead. How about that? There we go. So, if you are new to our series, welcome. If you're a past attendee, thanks for coming back. Our goal, as always, is to share valuable information and insights that you can use right now. The topic we'll explore today is the power of self-service plus automation. I'm pretty jazzed about this topic because the combination can actually make customers happier and reduce the work of IT. So here's our agenda. After a very little bit about Evergreen, we'll dive into it. And beyond that, we'll briefly demonstrate some of the concepts discussed in our always evolving view of a very advanced self-service portal and catalog experience, which is built on ServiceNow. Evergreen is a U.S.-based consulting firm, and we've worked with hundreds of mid-market, Fortune 1000, and public sector organizations to improve their IT service management execution. This is actually, we're 20 years old. Last month was our birthday. And over that time, we have delivered over 4,000 IT service management projects. We are a full lifecycle firm, meaning we have both process and technology consulting in one company. We are one of a few top-tier or gold U.S. ServiceNow partners. Since we are also a certified application developer and we develop solutions on the platform, we get very early access to upcoming ServiceNow releases. As an example, ServiceNow just released Istanbul, and we've been testing it for the past 6 months. We began the beta program on Jakarta a week ago. So this kind of insight helps our customers, and we can help steer them better to make better longer-term decisions. As we work with clients across the U.S., this is the number one problem they say they have. And as they describe it to us, they say, we can't meet our ServiceNow demand. It exceeds resources, but it can have peaks and valleys. Skilled resources are scarce. It takes 6 months to get somebody capable, and then maybe they get hired away. Also, we may not have a true solution architect to lead us. And when our people need help, where can they turn? How do we even know if we're doing the right things? Beyond that, even with expensive consultants like Evergreen, contracts, task orders, and invoicing are a lot of work. So we educate these consultants on our business, and then they're gone. That can be pretty frustrating. And this model here is how most really try to handle this. Core internal ServiceNow team augmented by outside consultants on a project-by-project basis, and possible offshore technical support. And we looked at this model, and as we studied it, it occurred to me that we are so used to doing it this way, we don't even stop to think how hard and inefficient this really is. At Evergreen, we think that the traditional service approach is broken, and that's why we created Evergreen Evolve. Evolve is flexible expertise on demand delivered by our global workforce of senior, implementation-certified ServiceNow experts. We don't hire juniors. We only hire the best. We pay them very well. We keep our overhead very, very thin and have a single lean management structure, one Evergreen worldwide. This approach keeps our people happy, so we have a lot less turnover. Our competitors can have between 20 and 30%. Our turnover is less than 5%. You also get, in this approach, dedicated U.S. thought leadership in our engagement managers and senior solution architects, either part-time or full-time, match what you need, who work closely with our offshore team of dedicated senior-only developers. These skilled resources are backed by our strength as a ServiceNow Gold partner and a certified application development partner. Evolve gives you one flexible contract and a dedicated team. It doesn't swap in and out. That works with your team to create a single solution that can meet some or all your ServiceNow demand. It's up to you. So you may be paying $180 to $200 an hour for these kind of skills. Evolve is very affordable with average rates between $65 and $115 per hour. So let's get started. As we sometimes do, today we'll start with two definitions, which I had more or less cribbed from Wikipedia. Self-service is defined in our business as the ability to facilitate your own customer service interactions using automation over the phone, web, or email. Automation's definition sounds a bit more industrial, the use of control systems to operate equipment with little or no human intervention. Its biggest benefit is saving labor, but it does call out value in quality, accuracy, and precision. I believe you could argue that these last three benefits are even more valuable than labor savings. Let's take a quick peek into the history of automation in IT. It began with runbooks, which were actual books of procedures for doing high-volume, highly repetitive activities, mainly in the data center, more quickly and accurately. These became code scripts for doing the same thing with software. Then over a decade ago, a more complete automation solutions known as orchestration came to market from companies like BMC and HP, followed by advanced open source-based orchestration from companies like Puppet and Chef, and then supported by openly shared and accessible code repositories led by GitHub. Now, the next generation of automation is one of the hottest topics in IT today, with remote process automation, which is robot-like mimicking of human activities, cognitive computing built on neural networks, and even true interactive artificial intelligence. But how much has this really affected or helped our customers, the employees who consume IT services? That brief history of automation is only one part of automation, what I call technical automation. There's another equally or even more important form of automation, which is process automation. And process automation is made up of two parts: business process reengineering, or what used to be called BPR, and technology-enabled routing of process flow, which we call forms-based workflow. A big part of ServiceNow's success and growth in customers is built squarely on this. ServiceNow is a great forms-based workflow platform. Somehow, when technology people talk about automation, they almost always are referring to technical automation, which I think is a shame, because it's a bit like the tail wagging the dog. The coordination and routing of the flow of work from request to outcome is the higher order activity. At any point along the way, individual activities as children of the workflow may be performed in a manual, semi-automated, or even fully automated fashion. The good news is, forms-based workflow is much easier to build and maintain than code-based technical automation, and it brings big improvements. It's not unusual for process automation to deliver 30 to 50% labor reductions, along with 60 to 80% reductions in the time to deliver a service. Should we automate? It carries strong benefits beyond cost savings. Effectively applied, it improves accuracy, consistency, speed, and agility, yielding higher quality, and it can have governance built right into it. Do we have to automate? A different question. Consider the degree to which the auto industry is automated. An assembly line with thousands of workers in the 1970s may be run today with only 100 workers, highly leveraged by automation. Auto manufacturers initially pursued automation to lower the cost of the product, but it then carried an even greater benefit, much higher quality. And as the stakes rose on quality, meeting them meant the difference between survival and death. IT is behind the auto industry in automation. But are we not on the same path? Time to market, agility, and creative enablement of employees empowered by automation may be essential for our survival. At Evergreen, we've had a practice in orchestration automation going back 10 years. We always felt it had terrific potential value. But even in the best of cases, it rarely became much more than a series of code scripts automating specific IT activities. It was difficult to understand and hard to articulate the value well, and customers never really knew it existed or valued it. It still required a lot of care and feeding, meaning money, but eventually passion for it would wane along with the funding. This is why we think it has progressed so slowly. We believe automation does not become strategic until it's exposed for self-service consumption by some customer. Once that happens, it changes the way the customer works, and it becomes visible, measurable, and aligned with delivering strategic value. Banking ATMs are a classic example of this. Not only did it lower the cost of service for the bank, the improvement in customer experience made having ATMs a strategic necessity. Modern customer-centric companies are built on the combination of beautiful self-service plus automation. It makes them fast, accurate, consistent, scalable, high quality, and very efficient. No one at AWS provisions your servers. No one at Uber calls a driver, and no one at Airbnb actually books your reservation. It's lights out automation. No one touches it unless it breaks. AWS, Uber, Twilio, Airbnb, and many, many more all deliver complete end-to-end services that customers want. If we want to leverage the magic of self-service plus automation, we need to do the same. So it's helpful to keep in mind that in any service there are three constituents: the customers, the providers, and the managers. The customer wants an excellent customer experience, and to deliver that, we must think like the customer and design from the customer in, not from IT out. The provider wants execution effectiveness. If we don't build in a way that it makes them more efficient and effective, then they won't support the change with the customers, and they will actually work around the system. The manager wants governance and accountability. And lovely, fun topics, I know, for all of us. But without these, we cannot build and deliver a consistent, high-quality service experience across the enterprise. Here are the three essential components of a successful automated service: self-service, choice simplification or happy mealing, and automation. We must combine a beautiful self-service experience with choice simplification, meaning less choices rather than more, and link that to workflow and technical automation. All three components working well together are really required for success. Let's take a little bit deeper look into each one. It all begins with a beautiful self-service customer experience via a self-service portal and catalog. We believe it should be based on 5 core principles, and all derived by thinking customer in rather than IT out. To be successful, it should be simple, beautiful, complete, predictive, and leading. It should provide a customer everything they need at any point in their experience and be complete end to end, leading them safely through the self-service experience. This is the front door to any successful self-service automation initiative. Choice simplification is the critical connector between beautiful self-service and lights-out automation. Without it, it is impossible to succeed. Custom or heavily customized requests by nature are complex, time-consuming, error-prone, and inconsistent. Worse yet, it's hard to set or meet any reasonable customer expectations as to delivery or quality, which is exactly what the customers want. In IT, we kind of have a mindset that whatever the customer wants, we will provide. And we believe this is good customer service, but it isn't. As humans, we don't want hundreds of choices or to have to create our own solutions. It's confusing and too much work. We want less choices from our service providers, not more, and we want to be led to the best solution by the experts who are providing it to us. We really want 3 to 5 happy meal or value meal kind of choices in any given category, along with the option to go a la carte or custom if we don't see what we need. This human principle is universal, as you can see by the Japanese McDonald's value menu meal. Our third component of effective self-service automation is automation. As mentioned, there are two types, process and technical, and we say that the right process plus the right workflow equals a good customer service. This is because we can more predictably deliver a high-quality outcome which aligns with what the customer truly wants, a quality outcome, and us meeting the expectations we set for quality and delivery when they decided to choose our service. Any process that existed for some time has become cluttered. Things get added to it over time by different people who may or may not have the whole picture, while at the same time the needs change. It's kind of like spring cleaning in your house. Every year we need to review and remove the clutter accumulated over time. So re-engineering work for an existing process is mostly simplifying and streamlining. We found that 80% of the automation work we do is forms-based workflow, and that workflow routes activity to different parties over time, ultimately delivering the end customer outcome. Most customer outcomes IT provides involve many different parts of IT. So we need to have an SLA with the customer as to quality and delivery time, and we need to support that with OLAs for the different parts of IT providing services. Last, you can see clearly how technical automation may be leveraged where appropriate anywhere along the flow of work. So let's take a look at some of the steps you can take to begin this process. We should start with the customer and can best do that by building a beautiful customer self-service portal aligned with the 5 customer-centric principles. Now, that's actually pretty easy because we've already built it. It's the Evergreen self-service portal and catalog solution on ServiceNow. It's inexpensive. It's only $12,500 a year for as much of it as you use, and you can buy it on the ServiceNow store today. Second, creating and maintaining viable self-service plus automation-based services still takes real work, so they should not be treated lightly. We need to define worthwhile targets. Fortunately, the Pareto principle, or 80-20, seems to work very reliably in IT, and that is that 80% of the service volume can be found in 20% of the services. So it's that 20% of the services we want to focus on. We have worked with many clients who've had 200 to 300 services, and it's very common for us to find that a very small subset of those actually make up 80% of the volume. That's great. Less, not more, is better. As we review those candidate services, we also want to apply a second tier for qualifying them. We want to value more highly the ones that are visible, manageable, and measurable. A good approach for tackling this I call 1, 10, 10, 10. Okay? Start with one service and build it to learn from it. Then tackle the next 10, and so on. Or it could be 1, 5, 5, 5. It's up to you. But you get the idea. To find the services, we need to do a little simple detective work. Review the top 10 customer interaction drivers, incidents, requests, queries, any interaction with the customers. If the volume isn't clear, then interview the level 1 and 2 providers for each area. They will know what customers mostly ask for. Last, since we typically do anything for anyone in IT, we may not see that 4 to 5 requests are really just one common type, or could be one if we think proactively about what the client really needs. So if we start with one service, here's where we bring it all together. First, we make it consumable in the service portal through a beautiful self-service experience. Second, we streamline and simplify the process flow, working with our providers from end to end and drafting our SLA and OLA agreements to go along with it. Third, we build the streamlined process in forms-based workflow, linking it to the customer-facing offering and the service expectations. Then fourth, as applicable, we apply technical automation for partial or full automation of work in the steps where it's appropriate. We have covered the create part of the service. Here are a few words about managing it. In order to deliver quality service, we need a service owner. Asking someone in IT to volunteer for that role makes everyone take a step backward. It's new, different, and it feels like a lot of responsibility and visibility. That's true. Even more so, what is the job and how do I do it? Here's a quick look at the Service Owner's dashboard we've developed in our Service Portal and Catalog solution. It includes information on customer satisfaction, quality, availability, and delivery. Now, if I am the service owner, I can easily see who my customers are and what they are asking for. The idea behind this is to make it the one place where the service owner goes to reactively and proactively manage their service every day. A good service owner's dashboard can make it a lot easier for people to understand and embrace the role of a service owner. Last slide. This is a fun part. So from our experience, here are some pitfalls we found that you might want to be aware of. 80-20 thinking is easy to agree with before the work starts. We all agree, oh yes, 80-20, we're going to be 80-20. But once into the work, IT's emotional engineering nature is to aim for 100%. An 80% solution is good enough, and trying for great kills good enough with project delays and big cost overruns. Look for low-hanging fruit by engaging with the customer. Sometimes something very simple technically has great value for the customer. It doesn't have to be technically hard to be good. Building forest-based workflow solutions is really application development. And app dev today is primarily done using agile methodology in an iterative, evolving fashion. IT operations may lack appropriate skills and experience for this. Last, these solutions are end-to-end IT services, requiring service ownership mentality. This way of thinking and operating itself may not be well established in IT. So that's all we've got to cover from the slide standpoint today. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and he's going to demonstrate some of the concepts we talked about in the actual platform.
Thank you, Don. All right, so I'm going to start. So this is our self-service portal. This is built on the service portal application within ServiceNow. And as Don alluded to, this is where we want our consumers to go to get information about our services. They can obviously submit service requests and then track the status and health of those requests. I also like to point out this is also an area where we can kind of promote information to our consumers either through announcements, alerts or outages, or other kind of things we want to prescribe or suggest to our consumers. And one of the things that Don hit on was that our consumer experience is obviously pushing into our IT world, where when we interact with an Amazon, we interact with an Uber, the self-service experience that we have, our expectation is that we're going to be able to self-solve our issues and automate and drive a service request through an automated and intuitive way. The other expectation I would say is that we've obviously become accustomed to being able to interact with these on a variety of different devices, right, through the traditional desktop browsers or through our mobile phones, right? And so the experience can adapt and adjust and display even on, say, a width of an iPhone to where some of my, for maximization of real estate, some of my options maybe get moved off Canvas where we use swipe events to look at the various components, see my favorites, see my recent activity, and ultimately interact in the same way that I can through the standard desktop, laptop kind of experience. I want to focus in a little bit on the I want to area here. And Don mentioned kind of 80-20, and this is kind of a strategy we oftentimes see as well, which is trying to push kind of the most common or the popular, the high volume kind of items to kind of a shortcuts or quick links kind of area. So this is for me as a consumer, my I want to short list of things that I would commonly ask for. Now, different people might see different things. Say, for example, get an iPhone might not be available to all of our consumers. Maybe there's certain roles, rights, titles that they have to have within the organization to see different things. So this list could obviously vary and be dynamic based off of either activity or based off of the user's role or persona. And some of these are going to take me to things like self-help articles where I can kind of walk through and maybe set up a specific solution, right? And from here, I can read through, I can ask questions, submit comments if something's not working right. If I have troubles, I can also do some contextual-based actions like create an incident in context to this particular knowledge article, and then that provides some contextual help, right? And further, if this isn't helpful to me, I can always go back into the knowledge repository, maybe from a more high-level perspective, see some of the things that are being suggested to me, kind of drill into our different catalogs, right? Maybe find ultimately some other article to help me solve my particular problem, right? And some of these articles may also be, as an example here, might also, instead of just being textual-based, could also be more video or media-driven, where I can kind of watch the solution rather than walk through a set of screenshots or textual descriptions. Going a slightly different route in the I want to, also note here that there's an option to ask a question about benefits. So this doesn't have to be isolated to IT, right? So this can also support our shared services spaces, facilities, sales, marketing, or HR. And this gives me an avenue where I can submit a question to HR, or I can, if I want to, engage in a kind of one-on-one chat to get my assistance I need, or if right now it doesn't work, I can always schedule an appointment for my kind of one-on-one consultation, which is going to look at a calendar, choose a window that's available, and then conduct that kind of one-on-one session on a time that works for my particular schedule. So let's look at an example of kind of requesting service and some automation. So I'm going to go into service request here. And so first of all, one of the first things that I see on my screen here is a bunch of suggestions for me. So this is one aspect of this is kind of also trying to bubble up the things that are relevant to me, primarily based off of my activities. So records of things that I've ordered, categories I commonly order from, things that are related to things that I order are kind of being bubbled up to the top for me to request. I can always hide this, browse through my different catalogs, find items I want to request. Or if what I wanted was really at the top, I can always kind of go back to and show my suggestions, which in this case is this particular item I wanted to request, which is requesting access to our Concur software. Now, one of the things that I could do, I could go ahead and submit my request, but this one's also highlighting to me that this is a requestable item that's part of an overarching durable business service. So one thing I might want to do is learn a little more about what is the service that I'm going to be subscribing to as part of this request. So I can go look at the expense management service and see information about who owns it, kind of how is it rated, who it's available to, some requirements, what's in scope, what's not provided as part of the service, and also some of the different options and offerings that are out there in terms of both what is provided, but also some of the commitments that are being made as part of this. I can also see some health and status information. If there are any alerts or outages, I'd see those here. I could also see some of the feedback provided about the service. And then on the right, you'll see options. So you'll see some contextual knowledge articles, frequently asked questions, which once I become a consumer of this particular software, this might be a place I want to go to learn more about, like, what do I do the first time I log in? How are my per diems handled? So some information that's bubbled to the top to help me kind of navigate and use this particular service. I'm going to go ahead and go back to doing the request. And one thing I wanted to, let me just maximize my space here. One thing I wanted to bring this one up is to highlight a point Don made about choice selection. So this one is not a very exhaustive form, right? So this is basically asking me to, I'm requesting access to some software. I've got 3 different choices in terms of my access level. By default, it's selecting the approval role for me, and it's doing that based off of my existing title and job role within our repository or system. And so it's doing some predetermined suggestions to me, but also giving me some options. If I wanted to select a different one, I can, and maybe downgrade my rights and roles and expectations within the particular software. But in general, I'm not given a whole I'm not given a whole list of specific features I want or specific kind of options I want, but rather choosing from kind of a predetermined list of capabilities that are available to me. So I can go ahead and submit this particular request. And this one kind of throws me into a page where I can track the progress of this request. Now this one's a little interesting in that there are no human-based tasks or activities. There's no approvals that have to happen, or there's no tasks that are routed to groups or individuals, but rather the workflow behind this particular request is fully automated. And so some of the things that are going to happen while it's kind of going on in the background right now is that it's going to create an account for me in my identity management system. It's going to reach into our Active Directory system, add me to a couple different groups. It's going to validate my access, send my account information to me, and then ask me to confirm this particular request. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh the screen here just to see where it's at. And if I were to look at no comments, but go toggle my activities, I'll see now if I go all the way through, it's completed all these activities. I can see some of the details about what it did. And it's also prompting me to validate my resolutions. This is where I would then go over to my identity management solution, kind of refresh that page, see that I now have Concur in my list. I would launch this, go into the application, make sure it's all working like I would expect, and then come back here and provide some feedback. And if something weren't working right, I can denote that here, which is then going to involve a remediation activity where a human would get involved to look at what went wrong and correct my situation. But if all is good, I can say yes, and you'll note my request now moves to a completed status. My overall request workflow is complete, and I should have now complete access to the software. To complete this kind of workflow, I'll also show you that when I go to look at my various services that I'm a consumer of, if I go to the My Services section, one of the things that's going to be different for me from before is that I now will have this expense management service showing up in my list of services. And it will also highlight when I look at the detail of it that I am a subscriber of this. Now the notable with this is that any material change to this service, so an outage occurs, a degradation of service, or if we change the offering terms, or if there's some update to the service, I can be a target recipient for that information now that we have a registry that I'm an active consumer of this and I care about this particular service. So notice this is owned by Alice Smith. So let me show you on the other side of this coin, and I'm logged just to kind of highlight over here. I am logged in as Alice Smith in this environment. And one of the things that Alice Smith is going to get is important notices or alerts pertaining to the services that she manages. So one of them she just got was that I has a new subscriber to this particular service. Some of the other kind of alerts and highlights that she would get would be, and kind of all in this alert section would be, if the expense management service had an outage, a degradation, a planned maintenance activity, those would be noted up here. If there was a near breach on a resolution target, or if there's a near breach related to a delivery target, those would also bubble up as alerts so that she can proactively manage to these targets, both from an availability, from a resolution, and also kind of delivery service target. So other things that you can see, history of metrics and how well things have been delivered, which things have been pretty good for the last couple of months, all hundreds here, right? Some user feedback and kind of any negative feedback that's been submitted. And then there's a kind of a management area where she can adjust the offering information, adjust which articles show up in the frequently asked questions, which items are requestable in context of this service, as well as seeing some of her consumers. All right, well, let me shift gears a little bit to another kind of automation example. So I'm going to stay with Alice here, let her be the one. So going down the I want to list, so I'll revisit a couple of these, but I'll start with one on the top here, so password reset. And the reason I would bring this one up is this still comes up as a common high volume call driver to service desk today, and an area where access and recovering your accounts and resetting passwords is still very, very popular in terms of activity. So I want to show just quickly how ServiceNow's password reset application works. So first of all, you need to set up and be enrolled into the software. So once it's enrolled, the users can go out and reset and change their passwords. And so there's different ways you can configure this. But this one I basically set up to where there's 2 levels of verification. One is it'll send me an SMS or a text message with a code. I've already set up my phone for that. The other area is to set up a series of questions that would be pertinent to me, that only I should be able to answer. So I'll put in some answers that would be pertinent to me, and I'll see if I can put another one in here that I know. Make sure I can answer my own questions, and I will submit my verification. So now I'm enrolled. So now the benefit is if I were to be unable to log in to either ServiceNow or other applications, I can come to the password reset app, which you'll notice there's a helpful hint here in terms of I can't get in. Let's click on this, which is then going to prompt me for some initial verification information. So I'm going to put in email address. Make sure I put that in correctly. And this is always my hardest part, is answering whether or not I'm a robot. So street signs. I don't know if they need the poll or not, but we'll select that. Nope. So goose. So I've passed that test. I'm not a robot.
That is good.
It's always my hardest part. So now I get my verification. Right. So now I'll send this. I'm just going to resend this just to make sure it sends. And I'm not going to wait for it to go away to my SMS, but I'm going to steal the code once it hits the outbound email queue here. Bear with me 1 second. Resend that. All right, there's a code. I copy that. Go forward. And now I got to remember what I answered. And see if I answered those correctly. And I did. So now I've done my verification activities that confirm that it is indeed me, right? And so this is where I would then make some choices. If my account were locked, I could unlock it, and that would be no further action for me to get back into to the system. But in this case, if I don't know what my password is and my account isn't locked, I can choose to reset password. Now this is, I want to highlight too, this is right now I'm just like this wired into ServiceNow to reset my ServiceNow password. But this same process can be used to connect to a variety of different systems, right? I can have a singular kind of verification and password reset kind of interface that could then reach out and touch, our various systems, maybe tap into some on-premise, Oracle ERP or some other ERP kind of systems that I need to reset my password to. So you can use this as a kind of broad stroke password management solution. So now I can put in my new password and then set my kind of permanent password. And then I'm back in business, and I'm back able to access the portal, able to access these other systems that I may be tied into for password management. So that's password. Let me go show another different example, and I will go back to the I want to list. Let's talk getting software as an example. So this one's going to take me, it's basically my shopping area where I was before, but it kind of dropped me into just the software area, which I can obviously browse, kind of browse through the different categories, or if I want to hone in on specifically kind of via keyword search some of the items I want to order or request. And this is the software item I do want to request. I'll go ahead and pop this out to a full screen kind of view. And then I'll pin my sidebar back here again. And this software, the reason I like to bring this one up is this one has some of the, what we oftentimes call kind of balanced constituents, or kind of the balanced scorecard of making sure that the customer gets what they need in an easy, intuitive way, but also the provider gets what they need. And so some of the things that are going on this one is this particular software item has a licensable component to it, so there's a cost to it. So some of the things that we're capturing up front are valid financial information from the consumer that we can use to fund and pay for this particular license. I have two ways of doing this. I can either provide a purchase order number that gets validated, or I can validate some cost center information against our kind of SAP system. And I can do some spreading of this where I can spread this across a couple cost centers. I'll just do a 50-50 split. Fund 2. And it'll validate whether this is, totals up correctly. And you also want to highlight, you'll notice there's no ability to submit here. I don't have a submit or add to cart button because it makes me kind of pass this test first. All right, so I'm going to validate my information. And at this point, it's reaching out and actually testing whether or not my information is indeed valid and valid for me. And came back and said this is not, this one code is not valid. So I can use a different one instead and retest this. To where now you'll see I've got a submit button. My thing's been validated. My cost information is correct. So that's kind of the top half of this form. The bottom half, and this gets into another point of Don's kind of choice selection that he brought up, in that there are a couple choices I have in terms of getting this software. One is I can either get it pushed to my workstation through an automated means, so push through SCCM into my workstation, or I can get it through a software download. Now the push is going to be dependent on my computer or the computer that I select as being managed by this kind of automated environment. So if I were to choose some other computer that isn't, then it would basically, which this computer is still, but it would make it to where I couldn't choose the software push as an option. The other thing that this bottom part is kind of doing is it's highlighting that this is a Windows 10 environment, kind of asking me to confirm that this environment does indeed, or the software isn't going to indeed work for this environment. It's going to give me some additional details about, for Windows, here's some of the requirements for me to kind of check the list and make sure everything is correct, so that there isn't any complications with this, getting this software kind of downstream as part of this request. Now, I can always choose to, instead of doing the push, if I prefer to get this through a download, I can choose that as well, and then push my submit. All right, so now let me go dig into this request. This is one that is not fully automated, and so there are some human-based tasks, so I can come in and look at the details of my request. I can see the kind of high-level workflow, which basically has from a consumer perspective, I see it's got to go through some authorization activities, it's got to go through some deployment, and ultimately to be complete. And I see currently that it's awaiting approval from a gentleman by the name of Amos. So just to, let me go behind the curtains here and show you kind of what this request flow looks like, just so you can see the full detail. So this is my inputs, captured all my cost center information and my delivery mode. I can see the pending approval here. If I show the workflow, I just want to highlight a couple things with this workflow. One is this one is set up, and this is another kind of common technique we oftentimes do when we do ServiceNow deployments, is we want to have kind of some standards to our workflows. This is a standard software delivery workflow, but there's some variables in here, in that my actual authorization stage is variable based off of the payment method that I selected. So I chose kind of chargeback. So in this case, it's calling a specific kind of sub-workflow based off of this being a chargeback versus a purchase order. The same thing's going to happen when it comes to distribution, in that doing a download versus a push is going to drive a separate variable kind of workflow specific for that kind of distribution method. So let me move this along and just going to show you kind of how it overall executes. So I'm going to approve this request. And now if I refresh this workflow, I'll see that it's now fully complete. So some of the things that happened here is we got the approval activity, did some tests or checks as to whether or not this software, we have adequate inventory of rights to be able to deliver to me as a consumer. If we didn't have enough rights, there's another activity in here that would get spawned to address that license shortage. But once the licenses are in check, then we call the distribution workflow, which in this case is this kind of variable software download workflow, which in essence adds me to various groups and then distributes the software to me, or distributes a link, an email to me with a link to where I can get the software. And then lastly, for the purposes of our management team and governance group, There are some activities in the back end here to register an entitlement to the software, as well as process the payment activities, so that the consumer gets what they want, but we also, from a provider and management perspective, we get what we want as well in terms of a management of our licenses and an accounting of payment. So I think that covers what I wanted to cover as far as kind of use cases and examples. And again, I wanted to hit to that last one mostly to kind of show the constituents of the service, and that both the customer gets what they want, but also the providers and managers get what they want. So I hope this was helpful, and hope this sparks some thoughts in terms of building your own catalog solutions.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. In fact, that's one of the principles we've developed, which is that, you know, in order to get what we want, we have to give the customer what they want, right? And it works very well. So if you have any interest in what you saw today, here are some possible next steps you might want to take. If you're interested in our advanced self-service portal and catalog, it's available as a fully functioning self-service demo. It's fun. It's easy to use. There's over 1,000 people have signed up for it. And you can get your own login on our website. Just follow the homepage banner. And you can be using it in 5 minutes, or you can download a demo version of the scoped application from the ServiceNow store. So whatever you would prefer. The one that's actually on the website has a lot more content in it due to some of the issues related to the store, so you get a better feel for what's actually in it, but it's still the same thing either way. Or perhaps you're interested in establishing a better Service Cloud direction and roadmap. Maybe take a deeper look at our 2-week service catalog strategy and roadmap offering, which is a great way to get everyone on the same page and to have a clear, business-aligned set of outcomes laid out. Right? It's very good for getting that clarity and strategy established. Last but not least, perhaps you're interested in a better way to meet your ServiceNow demand. If so, please check out our entirely new way of delivering services with Evergreen Evolve. So that is all we have to present today, and we can open it up for any questions if we have any. Steph?
Don, yes, we do have some questions, and I'm going to start with one for you. It says, regarding the happy, Don gets a few questions. Regarding the Happy Meal idea of reducing the number of choices we offer, how can we influence customer demand how can we influence customer demand to lean into a smaller number of choices?
Okay. Yeah, let's start here, right? It's well established that we all customers want less, not more. We prefer 3 or 4 good alternatives versus dozens or having to create our own, okay? That said, you actually do have 2 more really powerful levers you can use to affect customer demand. And these are cost and delivery time. And in IT, while you may not be able to actually use cost recovery, because a lot of times that's not an option for us, showback costing or suggested retail pricing has been proven to be nearly as good. This is because most of us have to manage our money. We're not independently wealthy, and so we're emotionally wired not to waste it. And that emotional wiring works even if it's only showback. Delivery is very powerful too. If your customer can choose between 3 or 4 different Happy Meals, and they're available in 1 business day because they're pre-built, versus a custom solution that takes 3 weeks, they often decide that maybe one of the Happy Meals is just fine.
Okay, great. Thanks, Don. Jeff, one for you. Is what was demoed the ServiceNow password reset application, or was it something that Evergreen created?
So it's a little blend of both, I guess. So mostly what was demoed was some of the native functionality that you get when you activate the ServiceNow password reset application. Though we did kind of blend it into our kind of portal experience. So there's kind of a consistent interface for the user in terms of interfacing with their self-service environment and the password reset. The other thing I wanted to make sure I note in the example is that there is an option, obviously, to choose an application or a system when you do a password reset, as well as kind of the credential source. In my case, was a local user account within ServiceNow. But you could use this to manage reset passwords in Active Directory or other applications within my enterprise, and kind of have a consistent way of verifying identities and unlocking access to any of those various systems.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. I've got another one for you. If we have a service such as an employee onboarding with multiple sequenced tasks, are the delivery expectations set and communicated for each of the tasks?
So Don kind of hit on this in his slides, and I'd say from a customer perspective, no. You would usually have, communicating to the customer some overarching expectation of when they can expect that entire end-to-end service to be complete. If it's a long enough kind of activity, if it takes weeks, months, whatever, you probably want to break up and put some milestones in there that you can communicate. Like in an onboarding example, you might put some milestones around equipment provisioning or equipment procurement, as well as maybe access or for facilities-related activities. And then as far as meeting the customer's overarching kind of expectation, we do want to leverage some OLAs on the individual tasks to make sure they get done within time. And then, I think typically as a provider, you want to put in some padding or wiggle room in there as well to address for, some common deviations that might happen in the execution of any given workflow.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. Don, I've got another one for you. It says you mentioned that, and I will ask folks to go ahead if you have any questions you haven't entered yet, to go ahead and enter them. Don might get lucky and get the third. Don, you mentioned that the 80-20 thinking is hard for IT. Can you give a real-life example of that and its impact?
Oh, absolutely. We hit this every day. We had a customer with an existing service catalog, very common, and it had over 300 services. And it was cluttered, it was confused, and it was really too big. And when we looked at it from an 80-20 perspective, we found that it was actually more like 90-10. In other words, only 30 services made up around 80% of the volume of requests. And many of them hadn't really actually been used in 18 months. Astounding but true. But IT was afraid of not having them because someone might ask for them, right? Or maybe they defended them under the statement, we can't take anything away from the customer. I hear that statement a lot. And why not? If no one uses it, what are we really taking away, right? So that can be scary for IT because they're so used to doing everything that's asked for. They're so used to providing everything. But the truth is, in this case, that there were so many services that hardly anyone used it. It made the catalog difficult to navigate and essentially irrelevant for all the customers. So the clutter and the confusion made it bad for everyone. So kind of the idea of trying to please everyone, and essentially you please no one.
Great. Thanks, Don. Another one for Jeff. Jeff, if we have a separate site for requesting access, how would you fit that into your solution?
Good question. And I'd say this is a fairly common kind of requirement when we set up kind of ServiceNow portals where there may be links out to other sites, whether that be your intranet site or maybe you have, in my kind of software scenario, maybe you have a separate site for procuring software or hardware. And so I'd say typically what we see is that the styling of the ServiceNow portal is made to blend in with some of the other sites that the user might be transitioning either from or to, so that there isn't a kind of jarring experience for the user when they get redirected elsewhere. And there are a number of mechanisms inside ServiceNow to support these redirections. You can set up things like catalog items to be kind of redirection links to other systems. You can also, either as you're navigating through different kind of points and categories or decision points or get help elements, you can use that as a place to, say, redirect or send a user someplace else to submit or complete that order activity.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. I don't see any more questions, so a couple updates before I let you all go. We will have 2 webinars in the month of March, so be sure to check the resources page at Evergreen SYS, that's evergreensys.com, then click on resources to see those upcoming webinars. We should have those posted later today or by tomorrow. Also, we are traveling around the country with our half-day service catalog workshop which is complimentary to qualified prospects, and we will be in Kansas City, Missouri, and Long Beach, California in March. There's information about those events as well on the resources page. So at this point, I don't see any more questions. I'll let you all go. Have a great day, and we look forward to you joining us in March. Thank you.